Welcome to the Top Order podcast. A full complement from Leicestershire, Worcestershire and Auckland today on the pod. We're going to talk a little bit about RCB's winning of the IPL for the first time in 18 seasons. Rob Walter named as the new Black Caps coach. Lippy knew this months ago through his extensive research and badgerness. We'll also talk some New Zealand cricket contracts, England test squads and a preview of the World Test Championship final. How is Michael feeling even as his Australian team prepare to face South Africa at Lord's starting this Wednesday? All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned.
Helps if I turn that
yes,
one up, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, there we go. A really smooth start to the pod this morning. A stumble in the intro. The button's not working. Jamie's got
the button's fine. Don't worry about the button.
Oh, the button's all right. Okay,
fine.
Human error.
The problem exists between the keyboard and the user in this case.
Right, fair enough. Yes, often the case with IT professionals. Jamie's got to get off. He's got an early start to the. Where are you off to, mate? The garden centre or something? You got to pick up some pergolas or.
That's how I roll nowadays, mate. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. It's going to be. I'm not even going into it, but yeah, it could involve garden centres and National Trust properties, those type of things. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Well, see if you can settle that age-old debate for us of whether you put jam or cream on a scone first when you get there, mate. With the cream tea. But look, let's talk some cricket, shall we? It seems an age ago. RCB winning their first IPL in 18 years. Virat Kohli finally getting the silverware in his cabinet. Krunal Pandya, player of the match and Sky player of the series for 717 runs. But yeah, we want to talk a little bit about the game. We haven't recorded since that final last Tuesday. So where do we want to start? I guess a number of players getting starts for the RCB in their 190 or so, and then doing enough with the ball to see things home. Bhuvi Kumar picking up a couple of wickets. Pandya, as I mentioned, as player of the match too for 17 probably was really impactful. But what did we make of the game and to a lesser extent the tournament as a whole? We'll go to the rack and opinion first.
I mean, Raj, it's got to be you, doesn't it? We've been since we've started this podcast, you've firmly had your colours on that RCB mast.
I predict them to win every year. Surely it would happen one day, and the day has come where they have finally broken that drought. Virat Kohli, great sort of emotional scenes on the ground afterwards. AB de Villiers coming out of the stands. He must have been doing some commentating or something. It was really good to see. As Binksy's mentioned there in the intro, I actually didn't think RCB had enough batting first. No one really took the game by the scruff of the neck. Kohli got that 43 trying to bat through the innings, and no one really got that 60, 80, 100 to propel them over 200. I was a bit nervous going into that second innings, but got the job done, and I think them getting that job done in the second innings is what has been different for them than previous seasons. They were able to, strangle them and really sort of squeeze through the middle there. Josh Hazlewood taking that wicket in the power play was key. That's what's been missing from RCB over the years. And then Krunal Pandya, his spell actually was incredible. It's triggered that little bit of a tumble there, or a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Collapse in the batting order. And I just think the game wasn't as close as if you just looked at the scorecard. RCB by 6 runs. It was actually quite a commanding victory, and they did a great job, RCB, to win that. No doubt that they deserved it.
Totally. I mean, like you said, it's finished with 6-4, 6-6 to off the last 4 balls to sort of bring it to be that close. And I mean, it had that feel, didn't it? That like you said, no one could get going. I think what was key about that innings for RCB is I had that 131 for 4 when Kohli went out near the end of the 15th over. But everyone that came in got going straight away. They didn't get a lot necessarily, but Jatesh, Livingston, even Shepherd hits a couple or hits one big six from memory, and it just got them to 190, which again is not, it's not a total that you're always going to be able to defend, but they just kept finding a way, even though it seemed at the start, like maybe this isn't going to be RCB's night. They put down a catch, but then a couple of really good catches kind of turned it. And, even your man Livingston, Binksy, takes a brilliant catch on the boundary and proves all those little things. Like you said, it's things that we haven't seen from RCB. I mean, to think that they would defend 190 in a final from the team last year is just unthinkable, basically, because that was the big problem for them, and it's just completely turned around this time around.
Yeah, I think that there's a stat that the average score in an IPL final is something like 167 or something like that. So I think I might have got that wildly wrong. If I haven't, then it's a great stat. But I think runs on the board in a final is important, isn't it? And anything like a working total, those kind of butterflies start to settle in. Jamie, I don't know if you've got some more nuanced and scientific thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, it's interesting around finals in that it's quite rare to get like unbelievable performances. Often it's kind of like people sort of regress to their mean a little bit. So it's not uncommon for you to kind of get that kind of lower score in a final. You do get these aberrations of where people, put in world class performances, but generally there is kind of like this sort of plateauing effect in a big event, as it were. So it's not uncommon to see those lower scores, definitely, just because of the added expectation and what it means, really, I think is the explanation for that.
Yeah. Any more thoughts on the final, chaps, in the bar there, or tournament as a whole?
I just had one thought about and just bringing, I was obviously rooting for GT all the way through. And I think the one thing that we spoke about with teams that were going to be successful throughout the tournament was kind of having consistent delivery in the batting lineup throughout the order. And I think what we sort of get in the final from RCB is no one's necessarily made the massive contribution, but you've got that middle order that have gone in there and maintain the momentum. And if you look at it, you've got batters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 have all kind of done that at a high pace. And I think it just proves that it's not necessarily about your massive scores. It is about continual momentum and making sure that strike rate remains high. And I think that seems to shine through, particularly in that RCB innings.
I had one item on the agenda that's a bit of a sideways question, but where to from here for Virat Kohli? He's retired from 2 formats in the last 12 months or so. After 18 seasons wearing number 18 on his back, he's finally broken through for an IPL championship. Is this the perfect time for one of the greatest cricketers in India's history to retire and go out a winner?
Oof, that's a big call. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's been stepping aside. He's obviously, I would know. I would say that the fact that he hasn't yet retired from the ODI format means that he kind of wants to go through and maybe tick that box before, to kind of get that on his resume before he retires. But I don't know. I mean, I do think it must be hard when you start retiring from certain parts of the game, and with someone especially like him who's been so invested in Test cricket and so invested in I don't know, the overall performance and being kind of a 365 sort of player. I feel like he, in particular, might find it hard to sort of be watching on and not doing those things. But I don't know. I mean, if you want the kind of fairy tale finish, then maybe that is the time. But the thing is that if guys want to keep going, they just keep going for as long as they want to go.
I feel like it may not even be up to him in a way that I'm sure his inbox is full of offers to come and join 2020 leagues around the world. How good would it be to see him playing in the Big Bash or even Raj's backyard? I'm sure he's got plenty of offers on the table to play around the world.
Have you sent that offer?
I haven't. But I'm contemplating it, just putting some money.
You've got to get the floodlights in first, Raj.
No, we're just going to hold torches.
Right, yeah. Very good.
Can I bowl at him if it's torches?
Just before we sort of moved off the IPL, I did want to mention and give you a chance, Stu, to talk about the Punjab Kings. They had a great season. They're long past being the easy beats of previous seasons. I remember my sort of prevailing feeling of them is that they play incredibly just to compete in matches, and they have done that over the last few seasons. But the auction was very kind to them. They did a great job getting some great uncapped talent and international stars as well. What do you make of their season and what they're going to do next year?
I think it's much similar to what we're talking about with RCB. They built a batting lineup that was filled with a lot of uncapped talent, a lot of Indian talent, and it meant that they batted for the most part well down the order into 7 and 8. Even in this game, like we had, Shashank and Nahil Wadira were at one point you sort of thought, they could get here, but as you say, it was that the Krunal Pandya kind of made it tough for them to get going, and suddenly they were, at only about a run a ball off about 10 balls each, and they just left it that fraction too long to get going. But yeah, you look at that lineup, and again, you've got guys like Stoinis and Omatsai and things coming in at 8, and the way they sort of built that side, you have Ashdeep Singh. I think getting Shreyas was huge for them in terms of being able to. We've seen what an impressive leader, I think, and what an impressive performer he's been over the past 18 months. Getting him into the side, I don't know. I want to say it bodes for long-term kind of success with this group, because there's a lot of young guys there with Priyansh and Prab Simran and all of those kind of players. Wadira, who we talked about, but I'm in the back of my mind, I'm going, I thought the same about Sunrisers last year. I thought the same about KKR, who had this really nice core in both of those two teams in the final. And then suddenly it all flipped and those teams really struggled this year. But, I think if they can keep the same formula, then, you've got to give them credit. And I think we said it last week, right? I think all the teams that made the top 4 really deserve a lot of credit for how well their seasons went, because, it's been a tough competition, and there's been a lot of good sides, and there's been a lot more games, I think, this year where I've looked and gone, I actually just can't predict who's going to win this game. And it sort of felt like that throughout the whole finals. I know we all sort of thought, Mumbai will probably beat the Kings, but they didn't. And then, the Kings go on and pushed RCB very, very hard in that game. And, even like Savvy picking up Kyle Jamieson. I mean, that proved very, very useful in the semi-final spots. I mean, hopefully for New Zealand, that bodes really, really well, because he's not someone who I've really thought of as a white ball player. I know he's been in our white ball squads various times, but I've never really thought of him as a white ball player, but he was able to bowl lots of different variations, I think, that worked really well. So yeah, hopefully that bodes well for them, and hopefully bodes well for New Zealand. But yeah, full credit for them. They've had an excellent season.
Yeah. I've got a couple of macro level issues that are to do. I sort of picked up from the context of this tournament and thinking about the IPL, but I think it's probably another episode for another time. Things that I think we could do to improve the product of cricket going forward. Not that there was any problem with it in this IPL. The IPL was quality, but I think there are some things that we can do to redress some of the issues, if you like. I think the balance between bat and ball in particular, and the preponderance of high scores, particularly in the second half of the IPL. I've got some thoughts on that. Maybe another episode for another time.
Teaser.
Paul, do you stick a white paper into the Slack and we'll let you know whether or not that makes it to air? How about that? Yes. Right. Let's move on from the IPL. And yeah, I guess how tough it is to predict it is probably only my only comment. We've got 5 really esteemed cricket pundits here, and none of us got it right, I don't think, and very rarely seem to have the right bracket. So, Raj, did you have RCB to win?
Well, yeah, but I do that every year, so
okay,
I get it right eventually.
Right, I was going to say we have to go back about 14 years for the preview show, so I'm pretty sure that's still in the British libraries and it only in text. There was no video, didn't exist when the tournament started. Let's move on though. We broke the news last week that the news was going to break this week, and
what happened, Binksy?
Lippy's tea leaves were correct. So no more Gary Stead as New Zealand coach. He'd thrown his hat in the ring, I believe, for the test job only. Obviously said he didn't want to continue with the white ball. But the New Zealand cricket board have gone for one coach to rule them all across all formats, and that's Rob Walter. And also sort of coincides with the release of the New Zealand contracts as well, which I'm guessing he would have had very little input in. But who knows? Maybe that's one for the boys in the know. But look, first of all, I guess for international listeners and perhaps even some New Zealand listeners as well, tell us a little bit about Rob Walter and his background, and then if you want to segue on to your kind of thoughts of that process and where that leaves the Black Caps coming into the New Zealand summer in 2 or 3 months' time.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because about New Zealand, because I've talked to a few people this weekend actually about the Rob Walter appointment, and they were like, "Who is Rob Walter? What do you know about us? They had the same thing. Can you tell us a bit about him?" And I mean, on paper he's got a great pedigree in terms of the things that he's done, certainly in the past few years. I mean, he came out here from South Africa, moved to New Zealand, took up the Otago job, took them to a couple of finals, moved to CD, moved to Hawke's Bay, won a couple of titles with them, got into sort of the New Zealand A system in terms of the coaching. I mean, New Zealand, I think, has done a really nice job of actually bringing our provincial coaches into, picking up New Zealand A sides. We've seen it with a few different people that have moved on to different coaching roles around the world. And they did that with Rob Walter. He then was looking for an international gig, obviously, and picked up the South Africa role, picked up the white ball gig, and took them to the ODI 2023 ODI World Cup semi-final, T20 World Cup final, and then Champions Trophy semi-final as well. And from the sounds of it, his family wanted to stay living here in New Zealand, and so they didn't move out to South Africa when he moved out there to pick up that role, and they've just stayed living in the Hawke's Bay. And so, I guess when he eventually decided to pull pin on the South Africa role, his name was linked with the New Zealand one almost straight away. And it sounds like it came down to him and Shane Bond for the gig, as we've talked about last week. And I don't know, I mean, from all reports, he's had the players backing. He's kind of been talked about in terms of being really good man manager and all of the personable stuff, in the same way that Mike Kesson has talked about and Gary Stead have been talked about. That they're not the big voices in the room. They're the ones that are able to bring the team together. So look, they've given him a contract that suggests that they believe in him to quite some degree. He's been given a contract till the end of 2028, which for New Zealand and our calendar looking forward, there's a lot of things on that calendar. There's there's 2 T20 World Cups. There's this next World Test Championship cycle. There's the 2027 ODI World Cup. There's also the Olympics in LA. So he's going to be involved in that, if, assuming he makes it to the end of the contract. And we've got probably maybe even the biggest thing for New Zealand is we go to Australia for 4 tests. It starts at the end of next year. So he's been given a big responsibility, and I think he's been given a side now that has been really, really successful for 10 years. And I suppose it's his job to make sure that transition is pretty smooth and they continue on in that vein. Any thoughts from you, Raj? I mean, I was looking at you, but I didn't really throw a question. I mean, were you hoping for a different name? There's been a lot of big names, I suppose, big international names that have been put out there. I think this is actually the first international coach we've had for quite a while. But I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, you call him a big international coach, but I'm probably in that group of people where I didn't know too much about him. I knew, sort of what you've outlined there in the teams he'd coached. I didn't really know too much about his background or anything like that. He's gotten results. You guys, especially over here on this side of the world or the bar, have really jumped on the South African bandwagon for the last few years. So he plays the style of cricket that you guys like. I, have had sort of differing opinions about what has happened with our New Zealand squad over the last sort of 5 years. Gary Stead's tenure, there are decisions that I would make that would be different, but unfortunately I'm not the coach, so I can't make those decisions. So it'll be interesting. And the one that you brought up that was quite interesting, Binksy, I was thinking about this on the way over. I wonder how much input he actually did have into this current cycle of contracts. There have been a few omissions, especially in the spin department, and then also obviously those players who want to be on casual contracts. It'd be interesting to know how they have awarded that, whether he had, the sort of input into those decisions. We tend to award contracts based on what our schedule looks like over 12 months rather than World Test cycle or whatever we're sort of.
It used to be based on a points system, so you'd get more points for however. I think they have to name their top 20 in each format. I believe that's how it used to be. I believe anyway. They'd name the top 20 in each format and you'd be awarded points, and they tally all that up. And T20 is the least, so often some just T20 players do miss out or lower down.
But I mean, I got nothing bad to say about him. He's got plaudits everywhere he's gone. He's done well. He's got the results behind him. So let's see what happens.
What do you guys think of Steady's tenure? I mean, I'm obviously super biased. I anyone who's listened to the show knows that I've known Gary for a long time, and he basically, when they were announcing his departure, he's talked about as the most successful coach in New Zealand. I think on paper that's actually true. I don't see how the finals that he's taken New Zealand to, the tournament, winning the World Test Championship, that's not something that New Zealand does win ICC events. So I think that's accurate. But I would say that it felt like the last couple of years of his cycle sort of it's felt like the public turned on him, and But I think actually, if you look at the whole, here's the team he took over. Here's the team. Here are we in New Zealand now, ready to kind of move on. I think we're in a pretty good spot. I think he's left the team in pretty good shape. So I don't know. Yeah, thoughts on his tenure and how he'll be viewed, and because I think a lot of people that are critics of him say he inherited Hessen's side. It took them to the World Test Championship final. Then slowly disappeared. But even if you want to say that, I think we're in good shape now. So, yeah, I don't know. Over to you guys.
I've got a take on it, and I'll position it in this way. Like, obviously, up until 6 months ago, I lived in New Zealand. I spent 13 years in New Zealand and probably saw, I think, that the way the public interacted with the cricket team change a lot over that period of time. There was this sort of narrative of New Zealand being the scrappy underdogs and punching above their weight for the resources that they have in terms of players, to actually an expectation that you're going to make World Cup semi-finals in both the 20 over and the 50 over format. You're going to compete in the World Test Championship. You go back, 4 or 5 years, and you had your MCG Test match, and all the rhetoric was, we're going to go over there and we're going to give them a run for their money, the Australians on Australian soil. But then I think the biggest thing and the biggest endorsement I think that I can offer of Steady's tenure, if you want to frame it like that, is they've gone for the same sort of formula in Rob Walter. They've gone for a facilitator coach. They've not gone for that massive name, that massive personality, that person that's probably going to shake things up massively. They've said, look, that formula has worked. We've got, relatively sort of circumspect players as well. There's no really, outlandish characters, I don't think, in that group. They're just, very phlegmatic characters, and they've gone for a coach that's going to match that. Whether it works, we will see. But I think he's put in place just a structure and an ethos that I think is envied by a number of countries, around the world. And then you only need to look at England's backroom as well. We've got, I think, 17 New Zealand coaches in our backroom staff at the moment. I've made that
almost
up, obviously. Yeah, almost half. Yeah. But look, a fantastic tenure from him. And that, that blueprint is there now. I guess that, Lippy, you alluded to it slightly. the last couple of years have probably been a little bit tougher for the Black Caps with some high-profile retirements. You know, your likes of Trent Boult not taking a contract and kind of picking when he's going to play a little bit. Obviously, Tim Southey's gone. Kane is clearly very much closer to the end of his career than the start. There's been a couple of questions, I guess, around the batting lineup. But yeah, I think ultimately, I don't think you can level that. Inherited a great side from Hessen and did a decent job for a period of time. He's been in the role for a long, long time and had a great deal of success under his own steam. So any criticism to the contrary is, as they now say in England, poppycock.
He's presided over a very difficult period for New Zealand cricket contract-wise, because there is a very, very difficult navigating period for New Zealand as far as making sure that their players are looked after in this modern era. So he's got to balance that against the changing expectations, as you've all said, around the fortunes of their team and how they proceed, how they are expected to win tournaments now, not just be at them. So there is a whole raft of change that he's presided over the last 7 years. And through all of it, I think the kindest thing that I can say about him is that he leaves behind a dressing room that's not divided. You know, often coaches finish their tenure because they've taken the team as far as they can go and they've either lost the dressing room or they've got no more voice left or whatever. I think, you know, Gary Stead goes out as New Zealand coach, whatever you think about him, with a dressing room in both test and white ball cricket formats that looks like a cohesive unit, looks like wants to be together, looks like want to play for their coach, as opposed to, you know, you see a lot of teams lose, you know, the coach loses the dressing room and they're no longer tenable as a leader. So big tick for me for Gary Hess, for Gary Stead, regardless of what you think of the last 2 years of on-field performances.
And I mean, something to pick up on there. They always talk about it. That the All Blacks always talk about it. It's, you know, leaving the team better than you found it. I think that flows on to the contracts, because I think for the first time, and I don't know, it must be a long time since we've had 9 players on this contract list that are under 30. And that's what we see with this contracts. We're seeing guys like Mitch Hayes, Zach Folkes, Mohammed Abbas all being given a contract at Ashok, which came as a bit of a surprise to me, I have to say. But even, you know, Phillips and O'Rourke and Sears and all that, you know, we've got now a crop of players. Possibly it's because some of the guys like Conway and Williamson aren't on that list for, you know, reasons we might talk about in a second. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a big plus as well. And it's something they all talk about, and it's obviously something that's been important. You know, let's leave the jersey better than in a better state than we found it. And I think you can just about say that. You know, it's hard because yes, we were a good side then, but we weren't a good side in all formats, and I think we totally are now.
100%. He inherited a battle-hardened side that, you know, continued through to that World Test Championship. We're expecting it to drop off, and it never really did. People were ready to stick the boot in, and they never really got the chance because Gary Stead kept the performances coming. And I do think that our future at the moment, we've got a few talented youngsters that I can see being around for 10, 12, 15 years of international cricket. And we didn't have that when he inherited the side. We do have a decent future with some of these youngsters. On that, you alluded to it before about the navigating the contracting situation. I mean, what do you guys make of? I mean, I sort of feel like the Kane situation is like fine, absolutely. Kane should just do whatever he wants. The Conway one, just because we want to get he's earned the right. We want to get as much cricket out of him. What do you make of this Conway one, Raj? Because I thought he might take a contract this time around if he had serious ambitions of really re-cementing his spot in all formats, because he sort of lost it. This cycle when he didn't have the contract, Will Young stepped up in various points and took it. We've seen, Finn Allen and Tim Seifert and stuff come back in T20s, take spots. Conway, I don't know. I mean, I assume it's by choice that he's taking a. Well, they're talking about they are still negotiating casual arrangements. I feel like he'll still be in the mix, but I don't know. I'm confused about where
he sees maybe his international future at this point.
Do you think that if he said that he's available, he would never get picked?
No, I think he'll get picked, but I don't know. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know if I would have liked from it just pure. I know he can go to these other places and make more money than he can make on a New Zealand contract. I totally get that. He's in his 30s. That's fine. I understand that from a personal perspective. I guess I just think from an international point of view, I don't know how you necessarily work your way back if you're not like saying I'm committed and I'm playing in all these because I think, does he now get picked for the Zimbabwe tour when he's going to have T20 clashes? I don't know. I think it's tricky.
I mean, I think this is sort of player power at its sort of height. They've got the choice at the moment. The boards are kind of being I was going to say something inappropriate then, but they are being held to account by the players. It's not the boards that have the power at the moment. And if you're Devon Conway or Devon Conway's management, you're saying, why don't you have that flexibility that you can decide when and where you want to play? I'm available for, September to December of the New Zealand calendar for any international cricket that you have. Otherwise, I'll just take a break. And then I'll make my money doing the mercenary thing, going and playing some 2020 cricket. He is not one of those spring chickens that I talked about with a massive, long future in New Zealand cricket. He is sort of coming to our side as an elder statesman. So why not cash in on it when you can?
Not to be too controversial here, but 15 months ago, if Devon Conway said he was not available for New Zealand, the sky was falling.
Yeah.
Right? Good. Like, honestly, the way that everyone talked about Devon Conway...
I think it's longer ago
maybe 18 months ago. But he was the best player in the world in some people's minds, 18 months ago, 2 years ago.
In my mind, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying... I'm not looking at you directly, but I'm looking
either
at
side of you.
Yeah. But, not to be controversial, but if Devon Conway is not available for New Zealand very much going forward, and Seifert and Allen and all these other guys are, Ratchin is at the top of the order. Mohamed Abbas. Are you losing that much at the moment based on what we've seen Devon Conway deliver for New Zealand in that jersey for the last 15 months?
Baldy, that's not controversial at all. And my take on it, and Stu, you've summed it up, mate. Kane's earned the right to make that call, I think, a little bit like Trent Bolt as well. Devon Conway hasn't earned the right. You'll find someone to average 36, no problem. He's not torn up the IPL. He's had a prolonged period now. And look, I think if you're being harsh, he's had that sort of honeymoon of coming into international cricket quite late, racing to an average of 50 in 20 games or whatever. And then people found him out a little bit. And he's, to borrow one of Baldy's phrases, he's regressed to his mean. So he's not a grace of New Zealand cricket. And so ultimately, I think the fact that they're still negotiating tells me that the board have said, well, mate, you do what you like. We'll pick you if we need you, because we've identified some younger guys who we think are going to be able to come in and replicate the performances that you can give us and probably have a higher ceiling than you. So, yeah, thanks very much. But, yeah, good luck on the franchise circuit, because you're not exactly pulling up trees right now. So, yeah, but Baldy didn't want to be controversial. I will be. There's a difference between a great and a good cricketer, in my view, and Conway falls into the good category.
I hope we still get to see the best of him at international level. But I think it's hard to argue with what you've just said. But before we move on to some England stuff, what do you guys make of the spin situation? As I just said, Adi Ashok getting a contract, Ish Sodhi and Ajaz Patel not given them. Ajaz sort of seems to basically just bounce between whenever we've got a test tour to the subcontinent, he gets one when upcoming, and when we don't, then he doesn't get one, even though he's contributed to one of the most historic series wins of all time. I mean,
why don't you come off the long run on this, Stu? I reckon you've got some thoughts.
My only thought really is that I'm surprised. Like Eddie is someone who he's someone who we've had lots of people have talked about with a lot of potential for a while. When you see him bowl, you can see that potential is there. I think that he is lucky to have that contract if you're just looking at first class records, and and sort of, where the cricket might come for him over the next 12 months. I don't know where it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will be on that Zimbabwe tour. He did just pick up 5 for over in Bangladesh. But yeah, I mean, I think you can make a case that, his Auckland cohort, Louis Delport, has outperformed him at various times over the past couple of years in first class cricket. So, Eddie's had some injuries. Look, I think he's a talented cricketer. I just did find that surprising. I think it's worrying particularly for Ish in terms of his future in the game. We've saw him kind of drop out over the past 12 months anyway of squads, and for him to again not be in this contract list is a bit worrying for his future, I would say.
I feel like this is a line in the sand moment. We're wondering whether the new coach has actually had his hand in any of these sort of contracts that are given out. This feels like it's got his fingerprints all over it. Drawn the line under that. We're bringing in a youngster and let's see what he does. Similar vein to Bashir we were talking about last week. So personally, I don't have a problem with it. Like I know those players. Ajaz and Ish have actually been great servants for New Zealand cricket. They've always come and played when they've been called upon to various levels of success. But this feels like it's that sort of watershed moment. It's time to move on.
Yeah, all good. Talk some England stuff, boys. We've dominated over here in the room. Tell us about this England squad.
Yeah, so
mainly the bowlers. Mainly tell me what's going on with the bowlers, because I sort of looked at that side. And yeah, I don't know. Cook was still there. Atkinson's got a hamstring injury. It suddenly didn't look as strong as I thought it might be. Can
I just jump on the back of that question? It's a great question. If I were to put it another way, do you think you've got the bowlers to take 20 wickets in this first test?
Yeah, it's got a very Headingley feel about this bowling attack, I guess. That's kind of the
explain what that means.
Yeah, so I'm regressing back to the 90s, and I always remember, the first test at Headingley, it being very green, it being generally quite overcast, and as generally picking quite a lot of seamers, and it going round corners. It kind of has that feel to it a little bit. But I don't think Headingley's like that anymore, or not as much. But it seems to kind of have a little bit of that. We've obviously brought Overton back in. We've got Wokes back in. We've got Bryden Cars, who adds that element of the heavy ball, as well as Josh Tong. But yeah, he does look a little bit light. There's nothing probably in there that is kind of sort of like a highlight as when you've got Wood or Archer in there, or Atkinson, who can just do something a little bit different in terms of an express level. So, but notwithstanding, I think there's a lot of skill in that. I think that there's individuals there that are able to do lots of stuff with the ball. So I think I don't want to take anything away. I thought Sam Cook had a decent debut against Zimbabwe. I actually thought Zimbabwe did really, really well. But I also think England were really sort of in an experimental mode, so I'm not sure there's too much we could read into that. But in answer to your question, Raj, is there enough to take 20 wickets? Not sure. Is the psychologists always get out, sit on the fence? I'm not sure.
So, Jamie, you've made me get up really early, and you're bringing that level of negativity to my Sunday morning. Raj, I'm going to answer the question as well. I really like what they've done here. I think clearly, if we kind of go back and we only need to rewind a little while, Chris Wokes was player of the series in the Ashes in 2023, and then was injured a little bit last summer. When you look at the way that they've kind of integrated Sam Cook into the side for that test match against Zimbabwe, that was clearly is he good enough to come and do the Chris Wokes role? Because Chris Wokes is going to do the Chris Wokes role, which is, to all intents and purposes, that kind of that sort of 82 mile an hour replacement for Jimmy Anderson. And it's not a replacement for a guy who's taken 704 test wickets, clearly. But Wokes has been earmarked as the leader of that attack the moment they gave him a central contract. in October last year. And from a depth chart perspective, it's really irritating that Wood has had 3 operations on his knee. Jofra Archer can't seem to, go for a, Sunday dinner without injuring something. So, I think he's got a ligament injury in his finger from fielding. He's going to be fit for the second test. And Ollie Stone, I unfortunately for Ollie Stone, I think he is the most fragile of those. And when you put Jofra into that category, who's not played Test cricket for 3 years, shows how fragile Ollie Stone is. He breaks down more than a 1967 Austin Mini. So look, I think that's unfortunate that we don't have that express pace. But then the bases that we've got covered, Jamie Overton clearly comes in as the depth chart pick for Gus Atkinson. They've skipped Matthew Potts because Matthew Potts they see as depth chart for Wokes and they see as depth chart for Cook probably. So that's why Overton's come in. And then Josh Tong got 5 wickets on debut and bowled really well against Australia as well. So and bowls at 85, 86 miles an hour. And we've talked about Shoaib Bashir, who's going to be England's leading spin wicket taker of all time. He's going to go past Graham Swan in 2029. So, look, I'm being slightly bullish, but is this attack good enough to take 20 wickets at Headingley? Absolutely. And I think they've got the kind of plans there, and it's clear, I think, as a punter, to be looking at what they're trying to do with the selection of these bowlers. You then add Jofra, Wood, Atkinson back into the mix. You've got the likes of Josh Hull, who's made his Test match debut. I think we've got really, really exciting seam bowling stocks and a battery of bowlers that are going to be able to take 20 wickets. I do agree with Jamie on the Headingley piece. It's not quite as seam friendly as it was back in. But Jamie, we're going back to the sort of 80s and 90s there, where you got your one test wonders like Pattinson, I think, played one test there. I think, what was the Gloucester left arm seamer? Mike Smith, was he called? Little left arm.
Yeah, Mike Smith. Yeah.
Keeper up to the stumps. There's probably others as well. I think Alan Eggleston might be one. Yeah, all of it.
Mark Eilert. Yeah.
But let's look at that starting with 1980 something, Jamie. So that's a little while ago. But yes, I do concede that the pitch at Headingley now, we go back to Johnny Bairstow's heroics. At the genesis of Bazball, it's pretty flat at Headingley typically, unless there's that little bit of cover on day one. So in summary, I'm really pleased with where they've gone with that bowling attack. I think it's well capable of taking 20 wickets, and for the second test, add Jofra into the mix there. And yes, I think the cupboard is looking quite nice. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm really sorry, Pete. I need to bring a bit more to.
You do,
a bit more enthusiasm.
You do.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Apology accepted. No problem.
Do you either of you think that Jamie Overton plays? I know you mentioned him being a bit depth charty there, but he doesn't play?
No chance. Yeah, not good enough.
Okay, and if there's no more questions on the bowling, how do you reckon Ollie Pope's taking the news he's going to set out now that Jacob Bethell's back?
Yeah, look, I'll leave that to the psychologist. I think Ollie Pope plays. I think Bethell mixes the drinks.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think Bethell still probably needs to earn the right in that sense. I think Pope probably still has the stake as that position. I think they'll probably give him. I don't know. Do they go back to the old style? We're going to give you two tests, 3 tests. We'll see how we go, and if it's not, and then we'll. I don't know. But I think you stick with Pope at the moment. I think. Bethell carries the drinks, as Binksy says. I think the batting lineup is exciting. It is. It's kind of does what it says on the tin. I think you know what you're generally going to get. It's going to be high tempo. It's going to be aggressive. You're going to have maybe somebody, probably Root, who's going to drop anchor should we need to at some point. But I think you know what you're going to get from it. It's going to be explosive at the start. and it's going to be maintain that high level of intensity throughout, and that's just the brand that they're going to play. And on any given Sunday, you know, you can score 400 in a day. On another Sunday, you know, you can be 150 for seven. You know, so but I think that's kind of the brand that we're going to play. It's exciting, but we're coming up against the super talented, super skillful bowling attack, I think. So it's going to be a really great challenge.
And I think the one thing I just add on that is this kind of harks back a little bit to a debate, a historic debate, which was the 2005 Ashes, where they wanted to get Peterson in, didn't they? And the way that was badged up in the media, it was Peterson or it was Thorpe, and it was never really Peterson or Thorpe. It was actually more about whether Ian Bell played, when you've got that kind of generational talent coming in. So there isn't, you know, anybody sort of other than Root closer to the end of their career or really close to the end of their career, and there's no question marks around him. I wonder whether the question mark at ECB Towers in the corridors might be around. We've got Bethell and we've got Jamie Smith, both of whom I think could be generational talent for England over the next 10 years. Whether or not there's even Ollie Pope can do a job keeping wicket at 6 or 7. Maybe that might be the route that they go down, because I don't think they want to lose Ollie Pope from that side. So we might see a little bit of a mix and match there, where Pope might get asked to take the gloves again potentially. But yeah, I think they definitely go with him for this whole series against India. I don't see them chopping and changing during the series, other than for injury. Would be my view.
Yeah, you wouldn't see a change in the opening pair.
Nah,
either. No.
Nah.
Is it time to talk about the World Test Championship final?
Before we do, Lip, I just think we're talking about that Test squad, which is 2 or 3 weeks away. There's some one-day international cricket going on and T20 at the moment. So England play the second T20 today against the West Indies. They won the one-dayers comprehensively and won the first T20 pretty comprehensively as well. Interesting, we've seen Bethell had a role in those ODIs and playing a role in the T20 as well. He got smacked for I think 24 in an over, and then got a wicket off the final ball in that T20, which at times you can do. So a little bit of one-day international cricket, and also the England women going really, really well against the same opposition against West Indies at the moment. Nat Sciver-Brunt, stamping her captaincy authority onto that. A couple of massive opening partnerships in those games. Amy Jones and Tammy Beaumont both scoring hundreds in an ODI. I think at Leicester, wasn't it, Jamie? Was it at Grace Road?
At Grace Road, yeah.
English summer, started well. India here to potentially ruin the party. But yes, let's move on to World Test Championship final taking place at the Thomas Lord's ground. It's kicking off on Wednesday this week. South Africa had a little tune-up against Zimbabwe, and I think they're down in down in that part of the world training. The Australians, I believe, in Beckenham in Kent, and I've seen that they were getting some miles into the legs of their bowlers 2 weeks in advance of this World Test Championship final. The seamers looking pretty tasty on a couple of the little YouTube and Instagram clips I've seen, and Marnus buzzing around like a wasp around a can of Coke, as well as we would expect. But yes, where do we want to open with this, Ball? Did we want to come to you with I guess the view from the Australian camp? No,
You want me to ask you a question that I prepared you for?
Yes.
So, question without notice. The big talking points, if we look at the Australians, have been around form and issues they've had, preparation, which has been probably a bit under par. Do you have any sort of thoughts or feelings around what your 11 may look like, and then we can roll off that?
I'm glad you asked, because I think there are 2 spots in the Australian team that are up for grabs: the opening spot alongside Usman Khawaja, and also the spot at number 3. And so there's 2 spots in the top 6 that I think are up for grabs. And
interesting.
Really, if you have a look at it, incumbency means nothing at the moment, because Australia have, and we'll put the explicit notice on this episode, but the Australian selectors have dicked around with the opening position so much in the last 10 test matches that incumbency means nothing. Travis Head's had a go. Sam Constas has had a go. I think I had a go.
How'd that work out?
I scored just as many runs as Nathan McSweeney, who also had a go. Like, who's gonna open for this one-off test match to decide who wins the World Test Championship final? So that is question number one. And question number two is the form of the Wasp, Marnus loose bus change. So in the last 10 professional games that he's played, he's scored 252 runs at 23, which is admittedly, big Marnus fan, he's a Queenslander, but that's not good enough at test level if you're going into a one-off game to decide who's the best test
super
test
Australian
team.
then, Baldy, with that's not good enough.
Queenslanders. Don't Queenslanders pick and stick? That's what I've heard.
Queenslanders should pick and stick, but if you're not good enough and you're not in form and you're not going to produce the outcome that we want, we have to look elsewhere. So who are the contenders? Okay, Cameron Green, Sam Constas, who is ostensibly the incumbent, if you ignore the fact that we went to Sri Lanka and didn't play him. Josh Inglis, potentially, somewhere in the order. Cameron Green. Did I mention Cameron Green? I think I mentioned Cameron Green.
Cameron
Marcus Harris.
Yeah.
And
Who isn't
then
in the squad, as far as I'm aware?
no, he's not in the squad. But I want to talk about Marcus Harris, right? Okay, so Marcus Harris is not in the squad. In his last 10 professional games of cricket, he has 915 runs at an average of 51 with 300s and 350s.
That's better than 23,
How is that,
isn't
guy?
it?
That's I tell you now, 51 is double 23. It's twice as good, right? You have a look at Sam Constance's last 10 professional games of cricket, 426 runs at 28.
That's
right?
better than
What about his
23.
last two?
That's better than 23, but it's not as good as Josh Inglis, 276 runs at 34. Now, they're all mostly T20, so you read into that what you will. Bo Webster, 396 at 30, but he's an all-rounder. He bowls and bats and whatnot as well. And then Cameron Green, 629 runs at 62.9 in his last
300s in his 5 county games.
So he's going well as well. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that not only does incumbency mean nothing, but that Green's not going to bowl. Yeah. And we need an all-rounder.
He's definitely not bowling. They've said he's not going to bowl.
Right?
Both of those things.
Both of those things
This
are
is
true.
a one-off test that
Yep.
they're selecting, and Cameron Green's not going to bowl.
Right. So Bo Webster's a lock at number 6, right?
Is he?
Yep.
Is he?
100%.
Okay.
100%. We need an all-rounder. He's the best all-rounder we have.
I guess if Green's not bowling,
If he's not bowling,
guess
we
you
need
have
an
to have
all-rounder.
Webster.
We have to have Bo Webster. So Bo Webster's logged in at number 6.
4 pretty good frontline bowlers, though.
And a
You
bit
can
of
only
leg
bowl
spin
2 at
from
each end.
Labuschagne.
We're
I have
not,
to remind Lippy about this
He
all
can
the
bowl
time.
seamers as well, Labuschagne. He can do it all.
okay.
Anyway, this is Baldy's time.
The fact that I'm not going to pick Marnus Labuschagne in the test team probably tells you that he doesn't need to bowl as an all-rounder. He certainly doesn't need to bowl that dross that he bowled, the bouncer theory thing. That's not going to happen in my test team. Okay? Right. So
lay it on us.
two spots, the opening spot and the number 3. We can rule out my preferred option, which is to pick Marcus Harris, because he's the safest pair of hands at the moment and has form in England right now.
I can confirm he won't be playing.
I think he actually is the guy with the safest pair of hands that you can trust against that really good South African attack. I'm sorry, but that South African attack is good enough that you need a proper good opener. So now what are we going to do? We either have to then go with, okay, well, that means that probably Sam Constas becomes a bit of an option, but what's he going to deliver us? He's just as likely to get 20 and get out at 20 as to get 40. He's kind of the opposite of the Ollie Pope problem. Ollie Pope either gets no runs or gets a really big score. When he gets a start, he gets on. But Sam Constas could just as easily get to 20 and get out as to get to 20 and then go on and get 50.
I think Sam Constas, we just don't know what he is yet. He's a young player, he's starting out. We don't know what he is.
He has tremendous potential. He scored, hundreds in each innings of a game. He is a prodigious talent. But I am talking about a one-off game for all the marbles, folks. Mm-hmm. And so I have a question mark as to whether or not he's the best guy for the job. I think Australia should go with something like, if it's going to be Sam Constas at the top of the order, then it has to be Cameron Green at 3 and then Travis Head at 5. Now, we've basically said Travis Head is not going to open unless it's in the subcontinent. So my idea of having Travis Head and Cameron Green at 3 and Josh Inglis at 5, which is probably the best 6 bats that we have in the squad, is probably a non-starter, right? So if you're going to get Head, Inglis, and Green, who I think are the best 3 bats in the squad, you either have to open with Travis
Steve
Head.
Smith,
We're going to leave Steve Smith at 4. We've had that experiment.
You just said best 3 bats in the squad.
Of the options.
Of the options that we've got.
I see, yes.
Of the
Okay,
options.
I'm
So
with you.
Smith's locked in. He's got 546 runs at 586 runs at 53 in the last 12 months. Alex Carey's got 700 runs at 70 in his last 10 games. With no problems there.
Need a keeper.
So you
as well.
either got, and you need a keeper. So you've either got Head to open and then Green at 3 and Inglis at 5, or Green to open and then Inglis at 3 and Head at 5. I think they're the best 6 bats. Where you then fit them is kind of a matter of personal preference. I don't think Australia are going to open with Travis Head. So whether or not you open with Cameron Green and slot Inglis in at 5, or whether or not you just go with Sam Constance.
For what it's worth, Green's been batting 5 and 6 in these county games, and I feel like that must be for a reason.
I don't think England would do. I think the England county team's not going to do Australia any favours, but I think that's a way of working him into the game, right?
I think McDonald, said that he is looking at him at 3 as well. But I feel like you're overthinking this, Baldy. I feel like to me it seems pretty simple that they're going to go with Marnus as an opener. They're going to go with who at number 3? Green at number 3, and then Webster at 6, like you said. I feel like that's what is going to happen.
I think that's possibly what's going to happen, but that's my least favourite of any of the options because at the moment I just don't trust that Marnus Labuschagne is going to score any runs. I really don't. I'd almost rather see if we're going to have an opener that's kind of a bit left field, then I would almost rather have Sam Constance there because he's potentially a point of difference and maybe he comes off in one of the 2 innings. I just don't. At the moment, I just don't have faith that Marnus Labuschagne is going to do a job and keep Australia out of trouble because what we need desperately is for Travis Head to come in at 200 for 3 or 170 for 3 because then we can really set up a game of cricket in that first innings.
Baldy, for a one-off game, why do you need the insurance policy of Webster at 6? Well, you're saying your seamers can't bowl 15, 16 overs a day for 5 days for a one-off game? I know there's some concerns around Hazelwood, and Boland's been injured as well, and that seems to be a shootout as well. Who do you go with there? Do you go with Hazelwood or Boland? I think you go with Hazelwood if he's 100% fit, don't you?
100%.
Yeah.
If Hazelwood is fit, he's in the team.
Yeah.
The bowling machine is not my problem at the moment. I think we've got the bowlers with Webster in there as cover, just in case there's an injury or Australia end up on a flat deck and bowling for a wee while. Having an extra bowler, I think it doesn't hurt my feelings.
As a batsman, you don't lose. What's his numbers like over the last?
I think that's the
Webster?
thing about Webster. He's good
scored
enough
runs.
to hold his own and in amongst the rest of the guys that you're talking
He
about.
looks one
in terms
too
of
high at
Constance
6 for me. Would be
Webster?
Yeah. He's one too high at 6.
I mean,
Jingles.
last 10 professional games, 396 at 30.
Yeah, I'd play Jingles there, mate.
Well, I mean, if you're confident and the Australian selectors are confident that you've got enough bowling in the 4 and that they are completely fit, there's no issues with fitness, then Josh Inglis is a better pure batter, I think, at number 6. But I just can't fault any of the contributions that Bo Webster has made to the Australian side when he's been in it. He is a terrific field, and I know we've got Cameron Green in the gully, but he is a brilliant field. He has been serviceable with the ball. He does a job. We're not asking him to bowl 170 miles an hour or bowl Shoaib Bashir-like trajectories with his off breaks, but he's able to do some of both. I just think he's a brilliant glue guy in a team that kind of needs someone in that spot. But if we're completely confident that we can take 20 wickets with Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood and Lyon, and we don't need another bowler, then that gives us an option to either pick Constance and Marnus and then put Green down at number 6, or you pick Josh Inglis and have an extra gun batter who's in form at the moment.
So we've established there's a lot of options. Can you nail anything to your feelings to the mark?
Well,
what you think they're gonna pick?
Like I said, I wouldn't pick Marnus to open the batting, but that's what I think Australia will do. They'll pick Marnus to open, Green at 3, Bo Webster at 6, and then the standard bowling lineup.
And you think that do you think there's a bit of a media beat up at the moment with the Hazelwood versus Boland thing? In my opinion, I don't even think it's a question.
It's not even a question, is it? Hazelwood's got to play. We've just seen how brilliant he is at the IPL. I mean, I know they're completely different competitions.
I put it in just because we've got a cricket podcast and we've got to talk about stuff. Yeah, clearly Hazelwood plays. But, stir the media. You've got to stir the pot. That's what we've got to do with pundits.
And I mean, look, I think if you were worried about your own batting lineup and think I need to get more batting depth in, and you want to get an Inglis or someone, and Webster's the person you're looking at, I think you're also looking at the South Africa side of this to flip it around and say that bowling lineup is their strength and that batting lineup is the thing that we don't know. Like, there's some talented cricketers in that side, but I don't think there's definitely not the track record of, being able to pile runs on in terms of averages and being able to score hundreds. Look, Markram's talented. Rickleton, I've been super impressed with him. He's someone, I think he's a really key player actually in this game, Rickleton, just because of, I think he's someone who can build a really big score, can kind of play all around the ground. But then, the last test they had Wian Mulder batting at 3,
This was going to happen.
And that looks like that's what's going to happen again. You've got Bavuma, Stubbs betting him. There's, you kind of don't know what you're getting from those guys at 5 and 6 necessarily.
Yeah, so
I think
looks like the guy that's sort of their spare batter at the moment. And they've only managed the one sort of warm-up or tune-up game, haven't they? And the weather affected that against Zimbabwe at Arundel.
Yeah.
So they went Markram, Rickleton, Mulder, Bavuma, Stubbs. And then they kind of, but they had 5 guys retired out in that. The only one that got 50 was Rickleton. He got 62 and was, Tristan Stubbs did as well.
What I find interesting, sorry, Binksy, I've cut over you there, about that side, if they do play that side, is how many bowlers does this team have?
Yeah.
They've got, 3 in the top 5 that can actually genuinely bowl. Well, I don't know if they'll even be required to bowl, but it seems like they are preparing for all scenarios in that situation.
Yeah, it does seem weird that you wouldn't pick Dazorzi and try and put one of those guys at 3 and but I don't know. There's plenty with Janssen, Maharaj, Rabada, and then I don't know. It's probably
Ngidi.
You could convince me any of those other 3 bowlers are going to play. Ngidi, Bosch, Patterson. So that I think that's a lineup that can really trouble Australia the way that we've seen. It's so hard to get a line on the South African Test side. In my head, I think they're a very, very good side, and you go you look at this. You look at the World Test Championship, and a lot of the coverage around it was about how South Africa got here. They haven't played a good side and all this kind of stuff. But they've won 7 tests on the bounce. They did exactly what they needed to do. But then again, you look through. They beat West Indies 1-0 away. They beat Bangladesh away. Then they beat South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan at home. Those are the wins that they've had over those 7 games. And so, where are they? But you go, when I'm looking at it, I think that one-day form and the quality that they've had, I think it carries over. And I think they're a quality side. You're just looking at, can they get enough runs from this game to really make it a competition?
The thing is, as we've said a number of times, sorry, I'll throw to you next, Jamie, it is a one-off game. Like, if someone told me that Wian Mulder's going to go out and take a 5 for 30, I believe it. Like, I'm like, okay, I can see that happening in this sort of one-off situation. So I actually think South Africa is well placed for this. That, how can you prepare for something that you don't know what's going to turn out against you on the pitch? Sorry, over to you, Jamie.
No, just a couple of thoughts really. Just to bring a bit of positivity, just to satisfy Binksy, I think, to my tone today. From an Australian point of view, I would pick Jingles to open because it is a one-off game, and I would kind of throw the gauntlet. I would try and set a high tempo. If he gets out early, okay, well you've got enough in that lineup then to consolidate. So I would throw the kitchen sink at it. You're not playing for a test series; it's a one-off. I'd go for it. I think in terms of South Africa, when I look at that, it's kind of like multiple role players, like lots of kind of all rounders. I do struggle with what actually is the bowling lineup, but I think the key strength they have is they've got lots of different permutations. There's lots of flexibility there. So in a one-off game, if it is rain affected, if you need to change things, they feel as though they've got more flexibility than perhaps the Australians, where there is kind of a bit more of a formula. And I'm not saying they're not flexible, but it feels like there's just a few more options. Anyway, it's going to be all done and dusted because South Africa are going to win because Stuart Broad's doing a one-day consultation with the South African bowlers that it's been released. So he's going to pass on his 155 wickets of expertise against Australia, and of course that's going to win. That's going to have the most impact than any other coaching that's ever gone on. So that'll be the difference. So
what's that? Change the bails over and don't walk if you nick it.
Yeah. So
that's a lot of Australian wickets.
Jamie, can you give us any intel on what Lords is going to be like? I had a look at the last first class game, and it looked like it was Leicestershire that beat Middlesex there in mid-May. Low scores that we saw.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have mentioned rain around a little bit, but last time we saw a test between England and Zimbabwe, I couldn't believe how dry the outfield looked. So is it rain around now? Yeah, what are we thinking from Lords?
Yeah, the weather's changed a little bit the last week, but I think next week it's looking a bit more settled. I was sort of involved in that game when Leicestershire beat Middlesex, and we sort of played on one of the far ends, if you like, of the massive square. We were there was a shorter boundary. The feedback was that generally it was quite two-paced. Middlesex went in with two spinners. That's an approach they've been taking all season in their county championship, and it was quite hard to score because the longer boundary was then up the hill. So it was a low-scoring game. It was quite two-paced at times, and it offered a little bit for spin and seam early doors. But once that went, it was quite difficult, I think, to score, was generally the feedback. I think this will be in the middle. It will be on a different strip, clearly, and that means that the boundaries are going to be arguably equal. Yeah, I imagine what Lords has been quite recently is probably a bit, quite pacey, quite flat. Right, I'm not sure it'll turn. Binksy's probably got more experience of seeing Lords than me in recent times, but it's not always a big turner, is it? It's tends to be a really good deck. Tends to be
the pitches that they'll play on. So the two main TV pitches right in the middle of the media centre have tended to be pretty flat for Test cricket over the past 8-9 years. I think probably the biggest thing and Stu, you alluded to this with the drainage and the outfield, that they kind of really replaced the drainage there, probably going back 10 years or so ago, so that they could essentially get cricket on within 30 minutes of it stopping raining. The drainage is that good, which in turn has affected the block a little bit because there therefore isn't quite as much moisture in it. But I would expect this pitch to be a real CEO's pitch. I think they'll want it to last, 5 days, or be able to last 5 days. A, because it's a showpiece, and B, they want to get the people through the gates for that 4 or 5 days. So I expect it to be pretty flat, but pretty slow, I would suggest. I don't think we're going to see it thudding into Kyle Verreynne and Alex Carey's gloves through the course of the day. And look, that then does feed in probably to some of those selection decisions that are there, and whether you need that extra bowler. If you're Australia, for South Africa, you've got it covered by the fact you've got a number of players in that top six, as we've alluded to, that can get through a lot of overs. And then finally, it won't spin much. I wouldn't have thought in the middle that it won't be breaking up. So there we go. Open with spinners. First ball goes through the top and over the keeper's head is the real prediction.
2-day test match.
I know we want to wrap up soon, but I guess maybe just quickly for you, Baldy. The one thing I did think about this World Test Championship final as a neutral is, do we have a scheduling problem in that it's at this point in the calendar we haven't had Test cricket really for quite a long time, and is that, I don't know, how do you feel about coming into a game like this when I don't know, like the end of last year, it felt like we were all kind of building to the World Test Championship. We were from a neutral point of view, even though New Zealand had a very slim opportunity to get there. We were looking at the border Gavaskar going, can India kind of find their way to get in there? Can Sri Lanka kind of come up with an upset somewhere to get their way in there? Can, Pakistan was in it for a small moment. So was New Zealand if they had really kind of results had all gone their way. Then we have the Champions Trophy. Then we have the IPL. And now Test cricket it's kind of like Test cricket starting up again, but we've lost all the momentum for this is the marquee moment. And I know it's always been that way. I mean, good luck trying to find another spot in the calendar for it. But I mean, how do you feel from a excitement level about this game?
The problem is the schedule, and there's no fixing the schedule in the 30 seconds that we've got to talk about this. But I think for Australia, the lack of touring generally over the last 5 years post-COVID, the lack of number of tours we've done, we can't really then complain about, well, we don't have any warm-up tours to go on other than the tour to Sri Lanka. So there's really not a leg for anyone to stand on. If we're going to prioritise provincial T20 cricket over international test cricket from a scheduling perspective, from a money perspective, this is where we end up, and we have to accept the fact that this is what it's going to be. Ideally, both sides would have a bit more of a warm-up, maybe a test series or at least a couple of matches leading into the game, so we have a reasonable idea of what the form book is like.
It's funny, I don't even mean it from a warm-up point of view. I mean it from I don't know, you look at the other world tournaments and you go, you kind of build to the final. But now it feels like we built to the final 6 months ago, and now we've got the final. I don't know. It just kind of struck me as a bit weird as a neutral
IPL
observer.
Windows. It's just really difficult. And with the final, penciled in or inked in at Lords, the first few editions of this, there almost needs to be a conversation around whether you go Sheffield Shield side and the team at the top of the table hosts the final. But then, what if that's 6 months later or? It's really difficult, isn't it? And I don't think we'll fix it on this pod.
Don't think we'll fix it.
Shall we wrap up with quick predictions? And we can't obviously do margins because we don't know who's going to win the toss. But how easy we think it's going to be for our selected team to win or lose the game. We'll finish with Baldy as the only non-neutral. But let's start with Raj. Australia or South Africa, and easy, medium, or difficult?
Okay, it's a hard one. I probably should have had some time to think about it. I think essentially the team that scores the most runs is going to win. But it's interesting because I think of all the teams in the world that are sort of in the position to sort of play against Australia, South Africa is not scared of them as much as or they haven't lost the mental game going into the match as a lot of other sides would have. I have no idea what performance they're going to put out there. South Africa is a wild card. They could put a absolute AAA performance up there, A+ performance up there and win it. But I'm going back to the old adage that South Africa haven't been able to sort of cross that threshold of winning a tournament or a trophy at this stage. And until they do that, and prove me wrong, then I'll start to reconsider. I think that Australia's going to win. Hazelwood's going to take 9 wickets in the match.
Stuart?
I think it's really hard to go past Australia as well. But I will say I do think this is going to be hard. I think this is, as Raj said, I think South Africa is reasonably well placed to take on Australia. I just worry about their batting lineup. That's really my only worry. I just don't know. Outside, if they don't get runs from that top 4, I don't know. I just feel like it's going to be a real struggle to. If it's a flat wicket, like you guys said, like if they need, I think South Africa's best chance is if it's a 300 kind of game. That not many scores are getting over 300. I think South Africa is right in this mix. If it's you need to bat first and get 450 kind of game, I think I would be leaning Australia just in the way that they've got guys like Smith who can just I don't know.
So we don't. Yeah, you got to pick one.
No. Like I said, I think Australia is my selection. I just think South Africa will push them pretty hard.
Jamie,
Australia, and I think it'll be pretty hard as well. I think it'll be quite close, but for the reasons that Stu alludes to.
Yeah. I'm going to make it a clean sweep so far. I think so, Australia, but I think they're going to absolutely walk it. I think they're going to give them a pummeling. There you go.
Binksy, can you give us a prediction of what you think Baldy's going to say?
So I'm going to go make a cup of tea, and Baldy will still be on the fence at the point that I come back, and I'm going to brew it for the recommended 3 to 5 minutes as well. But yeah, there you go. Challenge.
Right.
Gauntlet laid down.
That one.
Down,
Look
down the barrel.
Down the barrel. Right.
Oh, he's getting serious. Oh, this always scares me when
I'm
you
going
do
to come
this.
off. I'm coming off the fence and surprise everyone.
Get ready on the socials.
I expect Australia to win and to win comprehensively in this Test match on the back of our bowling lineup. I love our bowlers at Lords. I think our bowlers are the best in the world. I even think Lyon will be problematic for the South African batters. I think we've got enough cattle and firepower, no matter who we pick in that batting lineup, to score enough runs to win the match. I am expecting Australia to win and to win well.
Awesome. Well, boys, I hope to be able to provide you with a live report on, I'm planning on going day 4, and if it gets there, day 5. So, yes, I'm excited to be back at Lord's first time in sort of 13 years or so. Luckily, the podcast helped me find my MCC tie because I put it on the shelf behind me, so I know exactly where that is. So hopefully down to St John's Wood on Saturday. But that is probably just about all we've got time for on the podcast. Jamie's off to buy some potting mixture and whatnot. And I'm sure you boys deserve a well-earned beer on a Sunday night, your New Zealand time. So this is all we've got time for on the Top Order podcast. We'll say good night and God bless from us all here. And we'll see you next week, where we'll obviously talk through a bit of World Test Championship stuff and the continuation of the merry-go-round that is the international cricketing calendar. See you soon. Good night.